Okay. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Leah Martino, and I'm the Assistant Program Manager of the Poetry Matters Project. I have the pleasure of introducing poet Daniel W.K. Lee, writer of Anatomy of Want and published in anthologies Take Out, Queer Writing from Asian to Pacific America, I Do, I Don't, Queers on Marriage, and Love Jets, Queer Male Poets on 200 Years of Walt Whitman. I just have a couple of questions to introduce you and your work to the Poetry Matters community. So let's just get started. So first up, I just want to ask you, how did you begin your writing career?
I began writing these very saccharine, sing-songy poems when I was in fifth grade. I I was in love, I guess, as a young queer boy could be to a girl. And I wrote a couple of very sing-songy poems to a girl, and that kind of became more sing-songy poems in like the sixth grade. And then I didn't really started taking it seriously, I don't think, until high school, that I thought, oh, maybe I do have a voice, and then kind of continued in undergrad and then grad school. Sorry about that.
That's great. That's kind of how I started, and I feel like that's how a lot of people start. So another thing is, what does your writing process look like for you today?
I'm not particularly prolific writer in that I don't sit down and compose something. Even I'm kind of like, oh, I I'm a net that's been casted wide and kind of hoping and waiting for the muses or inspiration to kind of throw something at me. I often get inspired in very odd spots, odd places. I used to live in New York for 17 years, and I would just walk down Fifth Avenue, and then something would happen, or I would be oddly very often standing at a urinal, and then a line of poetry would, it would kind of like spring in my head. So it's not a particularly way to write a lot of poems or to complete multiple manuscripts, for that matter. But yeah, that's kind of how I do it. I'll start in a journal. I'll handwrite, my initial, the initial line or image, and then after I'm done so many, scribbles and arrows and whatever proofreading marks I've made, I'll put that into a computer and I'll start composing there. Yeah, and it depends. Since I moved here to New Orleans about 2 years ago, I've been more prolific than I've been since I left New York. So it's been a really fantastic 2 years, despite being in a global pandemic.
So that kind of moves on to my next question. Do you feel like your voice has been influenced by New Orleans since living here, or maybe not?
Absolutely, absolutely. Mike, the poems I've been writing since my book came out have kind of fall, fallen in kind of two camps, and they're kind of, I have two different manuscripts kind of going on. One is very New Orleans centric. There's a lot of local flavor, and I feel very connected to this place. Even when Ida hit, I didn't have electricity for 4 days, and I was evacuating to outside Chicago where my older sister lives, and I did not want to leave. I felt like an organ was being removed from my body. I really didn't want to leave, but I just hadn't slept in 4 days, so
Yeah.
I had to go. But yeah, there's I would say a more of a like an attentiveness to the surroundings um, that is in my poems that are more New Orleans centric, and then the other like camp, so to speak, of poems that I've written are more polemical, I guess, to a degree, or political. Not afraid to dive into narratives that certainly have a stronger political bent, at least political resonance. Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to this like sing-songiness poetry that you said you used to write as a child, in your collection, Anatomy of Want, you write a lot of poems in the ghazal or ghazal form. Why did you choose to write in this form, or what drew you to this form?
So I initially heard of a ghazal from the great late poet Agha Shahid Ali. He was really the champion of the ghazals in the English language, or well, he was, of course. And I was just so astounded by the craft of this form, the number of rules that it employs, and in his particular, um, just his poems were just blew my mind, and I had to try them. And since reading his, I've written about 20 or so of the Persian variety, and of the strictest sense. I kind of follow meter, repeton, the couplet structure, the independent couplets and everything. I'm kind of an arch formalist in that regard, because I think what attracts me to it initially, and what attracts me to all formal poetry now, is that I kind of think of them as these magnificent prisons that you kind of have to craft
Mhm.
a language around the bars, so it's not so you don't see the bars. You don't know that as a reader, you can clock that you're reading something,
Mhm.
but you don't know what it necessarily all is. And I really kind of love this kind of, yeah, what I consider these creative prisons that forms are, and I've become very drawn to them, and continue to be. I wrote one called "This World," kind of in response to kind of Trump's America,
Mhm.
which is kind of a fun, you think about this kind of ancient form, and then the content of our contemporary political lives, and then bringing them together. So yeah, it's just a phenomenal, difficult, but also beautiful and musical form that I could just continue to return to.
Mm. Yeah. And talking about inspiration and challenges, this is my last and final question. What inspired you to write Anatomy of Want?
It was just a culmination of like 10 plus years of crafting poems, trying to understand my wants, my desires as a queer Asian American, cisgender male, and not just eros, but like there's a poem in Anatomy of Want called Bastard, which is really about the the relationship that a disowned um, or emancipated child had for a father who really kind of neglected him. So it's a really kind of an exploration of like, what is it what does it mean to want, to even crave, to a degree. There isn't a ton of like, I would say, explicitly eros kinds of poems in there, and I mean that's my personal interpretation. People have certainly said to me that they find some of the poems very sensuous and suggestive,
Mm.
which is fine. But yeah, I think um, it's just a kind of culmination of those explorations, and very honored, and have a lot of gratitude to the press, Queer Mojo, Rebel Satori, who is the local press here, in the New Orleans area, right out of Arabi, and for accepting the piece, accepting my manuscript, that is. And I have this wonderful book that no one can take away from me.
That's great. That's all I have today. So thank you so much for coming. And thank you so much for being so responsive and so willing to speak to me.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to discuss my work.
Oh, no problem. Okay, bye guys. Hello everyone, my name is Leah.
And my name is Annie.
And we work for the Poetry Matters Project. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check this poet out at the New Orleans Words and Music Festival this November 17th through 20th. This 20-year-old festival is a virtual feast that spans 5 days, featuring entertainment and workshops for writers and readers of all talents.
This year's keynote speaker, Clint Smith, will read from his New York Times best-selling novel, How the Word is Passed, and discuss with David Robinson Morris. For more information, visit the Words and Music Facebook page and check the Poetry Matters Project social media. We hope you have a happy and healthy day, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you guys.